Hey, everybody. How's everything going out there? And Pand, hope you're doing well. Stand safe, wearing your mask. Do you wear a mask? I had some masks made for me because I like things in black. And of course, here's my black mask. Huh? Those are pretty cool. I mean, you gotta rock the mask, not those medical ones. They're pretty hokey. Anyway, I hope you guys are behaving yourself out there. This is Wednesday. It's about 7 o'clock, and Redding's heating up. We're going to have about 10 days over 100 degrees. Anyway, I will not try to ramble on too much tonight. I just want to continue with literature and reading, how important it is to all of us, to you. I hope it will become a habit. When I was a youngster, I had an older brother who would bring books home, and he got me and my other little brother to start reading these books, like Jack Kerouac's On the Road or Kurt Vonnegut novel Cat's Cradle. And he was going to college, and so he was bringing these books home from college, and he was saying, "Hey, these are great." And there was a time in our history, this would be, long before you guys are around, where reading a lot of fiction became kind of a hip thing to do. The girls loved it, that you could read and you're literary, and they were reading what they were reading. The guys were reading what they were reading. And besides rock and roll and having parties on weekends and getting stoned and all that good stuff, people were reading like crazy. Now this is long before internet, social networking, all that. And so reading a novel for a time was considered a cool thing to do, intellectual thing to do, and you got knowledge. Writers, novelists have a tendency to write a lot of insights into the human condition, and we all need help into finding our truth about the human condition, that is for sure. And you found it in novels. Now, and I'm a movie guy also, so I was obsessed with movies and music, and then I would say novels were coming in a close third on all that. It takes time to read a novel. You got to be committed to it. Lately, in our new world that we live in, the world you've inherited, we're in a hurry. We're in a hurry to watch things quickly and have immediate satisfaction, or we get bored or we get restless. I watch people every day in their cars. They can't even be at the stop sign anymore without start texting. They're just at a stop sign. They're going to be there for literally 15 seconds. They immediately pick up the phone, do a little web search before they move on with the cars. I hope you're not one of those people, because they're dangerous, actually. But I go, we don't have the patience anymore to sit at a stop sign. Be with our own thoughts. Isn't that a scary idea? Your own thoughts. And so when you're reading a novel, it puts a lot of thought in your head. You will, writers, good writers, even poor writers, will be able to tell a story and hopefully hold your attention. I don't know what you guys read, if you read at all. I want you to do a discussion this week. I'll post it tonight on what is it you read? Does reading matter? Why not? And why aren't you reading, or do you want to read? It's just a matter of discipline, and it is a discipline. It's like learning an instrument or anything else that's worthwhile. It is a discipline. But once you get into the habit, like, for example, not to compare you to me, believe me, I wouldn't do that. I read every night. That's how I go to sleep. I have to read several chapters in a book every night. I've got 10 books piled up right now. I go this book, that book, biographies, novels, always on the lookout for something else to enlighten me and hopefully change something in my thinking for the better, making me a better, more knowledgeable person. So there's going to be an assignment now. I'll just assign it to you right now. I'll post it today on assignments tonight. The next hour, there will be some. You'll see in the assignment. There's some stuff from YouTube you need to watch. Documentary on John Steinbeck, the great American author who is known for Mice and Men, Grapes of Wrath, and maybe possibly, in my opinion, the greatest novel ever written, East of Eden. There's a documentary on him. It's 59 minutes long. I put the link in the assignment. Watch it, write your paper on it, just like you've been doing the other essays. I want you to watch the documentary as opposed to going to Wikipedia and researching him, because I also want you to look at the film, and you got to sit there for 45 minutes and look at it. I guess that's what my point is. Whereas you could go to Wikipedia or some other website and within 5 minutes copy and paste a quick bio, and I don't think you're learning too much. But to have the discipline to sit through, it's actually, sorry folks, it's 58 minutes. To actually have the discipline to sit there is part of education. It's part of we'd be watching it in class if we had a class to go to. You'd be forced to watch it in class. And I love it. Every time I used to watch a movie in class, I'd turn the lights off and immediately the phones come out. And I don't stop kids from using the phones. And I'll go around the class going, well, they're not even watching the movie. What are they watching on their phones? Are they doing something really important? Are they like texting their dying uncle or something? No. A lot of them were playing video games, poker. I go, hold on, guys. That's what you're doing on your phones? Put them down, watch the movie. Some teachers, maybe you've had these, they confiscate your phones at the door. I don't do that. They make you put them in a box and you have to pick them up when you leave. We're not children. We're in college, I don't believe in that. But you're in college. What you have to pay attention to, you have to get through this stuff. A lot of it's a slog. I realize that. Especially maybe in humanities, maybe it's not, you don't even know why you're in here, because it is a requirement, because you're going to be an engineer or an architect or a .com person or a nurse. You go, why am I? Well, because humanities ties everything together, folks, everything. And hopefully you're getting that a little bit. If you're reading the book a bit, the text and my lectures and between all the stuff we're watching and talking about, hopefully you're trying to get that feeling how important, especially the humanities through the arts are. So look at that, John Steinbeck, and then then it'll be essay 5 due next week. You'll see it. I'll post it tonight later. So it'd be like the other essays that you've watched. There is a small documentary, a TED Talk. It's only 10 minutes long. I put it on the site there. Watch it. It's a professor, Rita Carter, who's talking about why reading matters. And so you're not just listening to me. You're listening to someone in a higher authority. And she brings up some very good points why it matters. Because it does. This is not me saying it because I believe in it. Anyway, there's another documentary. This is going to be the unusual one. I posted it. The other paper I want you to write, you can take your choice. Watch the Steinbeck, write about him, of that documentary, his story, and or you could write about a wonderful author, a woman named Flannery O'Connor. I'm trying to get women in there that made a huge difference, literary difference. Flannery definitely did. If you've never heard of her, I don't expect you have. But she's what they call a Southern Gothic writer. She was born and raised in the South, and her books are literally full of scary voodoo wisdom. So the thing I want you to look at or listen to, because there's not much to look at, it's only 27 minutes long. Listen to it. It's a short story. Somebody's reading the short story. You don't get to see the person reading. It's just a voice and the written page. And because Because if we're in the class and I was going to do this class, I'd make you read the story. I'd hand it out to you. But can't do that right now. So please go on YouTube. The link is there in assignments. Listen to the story. A Few Good Men is hard to find. She is brilliant, scary, and perverse. And whatever her stories are, they're not what you think they are until you start reading them. And then they become, in a way, terrifying. And I'm not saying they're horror stories. They aren't. They're about the human condition, the dark underbelly human condition. Flannery O'Connor, who had a very short life, she only wrote 2 novels, Wise Blood, and a bunch of short stories. She used to teach literature, and she used to teach at the Iowa workshop. For those of you who are going to go hopefully study writing, maybe, the Iowa workshop is one of the most famous workshops at the University of Iowa. You can get into. If you get into it, it means you're pretty good. She used to teach there, but she was very sick all her life. She had lupus. She fought that, and she lost the fight at 39 years old, about 1964 or thereabouts. So listen to that story and essentially tell me what you think, what you got out of it. Take notes. And, instead of reading the story, listen to the story. It takes about 25 minutes for the guy to read it. And he's good. Whoever the narrator is doing a good job. Anyway, maybe do you listen to audio tapes in your car? Maybe when you're traveling, this is like that. So that's the assignment. Write a paper about that story. You don't need to do a bio on her, although you might want to research her a little to understand her better. Write your 5th essay on that short story. The themes. What was it trying to tell about us as human beings? Did it accomplish that? Did it have a style? Did it have its own voice? We all have voices. You have them, believe it or not. Not just this voice I'm talking about, but when you put your pen to paper, you write in a certain voice. Now, it may not seem like a voice to you, but after I read your papers, I start understanding who you are through the voice on your papers. And so when I see a paper that's been just totally copied and pasted off Wikipedia or something else, I'm not getting your voice at all. I'm just getting somebody else who wrote the article, and you're putting it over here onto the Word doc and uploading it. But some of you are pretty good writers, and I always comment on if I see something, a thread of creative writing, thinking. I'm always think about what you're writing, analyze, come up with some fresh thoughts about these people who've been written about a lot, but not by you. You possibly don't have read anything by either person. John Steinbeck was famous in his day. He wrote in the 30s and 40s, the Depression. The Grapes of Wrath is about people coming out of the Dust Bowl when that happened, and they've made movies. A great movie by John Ford with Henry Fonda, and lots of other movies. James Dean, East of Eden. So he was very renowned, and he wrote essentially most of his stuff was set out here in the Salinas Valley, just south of Redding, down by Monterey. And he wrote a series of books that were just wonderful about a marine biologist, Doc, and he's living down in Monterey. And they're just wonderful stories. He also wrote Of Mice and Men, which is famous classic short story that's gone on to be made several times into movies. You should check it out. And if you ever go down to Monterey, there's the John Steinbeck Museum. And he kind of put that whole area on the map because he focused on that area. He wrote about that area, and he's become kind of a hero in that area. He lived until the 1970s, I believe. and he was just a unique individual writer. So check that out. Check his documentary out. Write about him. Check out the Flannery O'Connor short story. Listen to it. Tell me what you think, and analyze her story. Okay, the best you can. Do the best you can, and actually try to enjoy it. Never know. You may just enjoy it. Okay, so we're coming at that's the assignments. It's going to be posted on assignments. Your discussion this week, and I'll give you a week or so to discuss, is why does reading matter to you? Does it? Simple question. Yes or no? Why doesn't it? Do you want it to? Do you have any value in reading? What's the last book you read? What's a book you want to read? Does reading give you any enjoyment? Are people, when I'm in class with this class, I have people read out loud. A lot of people have struggle reading, and I understand that. I think when you read out loud, especially in front of other people, it really makes you concentrate and think, and nobody's embarrassed. Everybody screws up. Everybody mispronounces words, but I think it helps. And so maybe sometimes when you're alone, read out loud. Hopefully when you're proofreading your stories, your essays, that's a great way to proofread it. Read it out loud. It's really good if you read it out loud and someone else listens to it. Another good way to proofread your essays is have someone read it out loud to you. Friend, mom, a dad, husband, wife, whatever, brother, sister. That way you'll find amazing things that you don't find when you just skim over it when you're proofreading yourself. So we're coming out of post-World War II America. That means after. Post, folks, this means after the world. So we came out of this war, and we're never going to be the same again as a culture. We can't go back to the way things were. Everything changes, especially in art. The painters change. We start going for abstract expressionism in the biggest manner we ever have. People just don't want to see pretty portraits anymore. They want to see humanity on a canvas, whatever that looks like. Sometimes it doesn't look like anything you recognize. It's all about what it makes you feel like. Music, I've talked about this before when you talked about music. It was changing. We have jazz is really coming into the foreground, and bebop, and guys like Miles Davis and Charlie Parker and Dave Brubeck, Chet Baker. They're creating a whole new language of kind of intellectual music. People were looking for other things besides happy dance music. Comedians started in the 50s. Guys like Lenny Bruce and Bob Newhart and so many more others were coming out of that era, and they were commenting on the world we're living in. We're living in a world that has nuclear bombs. We're living in a world that we were at a Cold War with Russia, Soviet Union, they called it. We had these issues. It was sort of a conservative era because Dwight Eisenhower was our president for the most part. Harry Truman was in there a little. But it was a very creative time. Some of our best writers, painters, musicians were thriving in this era because a lot of times when there's a lot of repression, and I'm talking about intellectual repression, censorship, sexual repression, the art flourishes. So these writers I want you to look at were flourishing, although Steinbeck's really not, he's not really in the group of the post-World War II writers. Flannery O'Connor definitely is, and she's an anomaly because she's a woman. And so the female voice is, and she has a very, very strong voice. You want to label it female, that's fine. When I first read her book, I didn't even know it was written by a woman. The name Flannery, I thought it was a man. There was no picture of her. And I read Wise Blood, and it changed everything. I think it's one of the best things ever written about a guy who's a street corner preacher in the South. And I didn't even know it was a woman. And this is long before you could Google everything, folks. Believe it or not, you couldn't Google everything. You had to find out by going to the library and researching the old school way. And when I discovered it was a woman, I'm like, what kind of a name is Flannery? Well, it was a middle name. Her real name is, I'm forgetting it. I want to say Judy or something. And she took that name specifically to kind of mess with people's perception of what a gender writer. Does it matter what the gender is? People read Harry Potter. You know, she's in a bit of trouble right now because she's kind of putting her foot in her mouth about the transgender movement. She's probably the most successful writer in the history of writing. She's like a billionaire. Those Harry Potter books have sold and sold. Have you read any of those? Talk about it in the discussion. Okay, these post-World War II writers came out of the war. They survived the war, folks. Guys like Joseph Heller, who wrote his incredible novel Catch-22, which was made into a TV series recently and a movie, 1970, about the insanities of war. Another one came out in that same era. He was Kurt Vonnegut. He had been taken prisoner of war during the war, and he was a prisoner of war in Dresden, Germany, when the Americans flattened Dresden. It had no military. I do believe even Hitler might have been dead by now. The war was over. Germany had given up, but we were still bombing it. And so we flattened this beautiful little city called Dresden, where they made these little figurines. That's what they're known for. These little there's no military point to it besides payback, revenge. And so he survived that. He was in the basement, and he wrote his novel, Slaughterhouse-Five, because he was bivouacked in a slaughterhouse for animals. Number 5. That's why it's called that. It's a really satirical, brutal novel about the waste and ridiculousness of war on both sides. And he survived it. And he came back, and he wrote many, many great books. And during the 60s and 70s, he became kind of a phenomenon on college campuses. He was a different generation than, say, my generation. He's my dad's generation. But he had an ability to kind of get into the surreal humor underside and the ridiculousness of the world around us in this brilliant way. And he lived a ripe old age. He just died a couple years ago. A wonderful guy, wonderful writer. Can't express how brilliant Kurt Vonnegut was, and how everybody who was listening to Jimi Hendrix were reading Kurt Vonnegut. Anyway, but other writers, James Jones came out of that. He was a World War II writer who survived the war. His novel, The Thin Red Line, and other short stories and lots of other stuff. And they've made him into movies several times. Maybe you've seen the Terrence Malick film, The Thin Blue Red Line. He was writing about it not in a humorous way, a more serious way. Norman Mailer, who came out of that era, wrote The Naked and the Dead about his experience in combat. He went on to have a huge career as a literary figure. He actually ran for the mayor of New York once in the 60s. He lost. He was known as kind of a provocateur. He used to be on TV, and he would debate different writers and always caused trouble. He was kind of a macho. He wasn't kind of a macho jerk. Brilliant writer who wrote one of the best fiction books ever called Executioner's Song. Had a long, long career. He was a film director a little bit. His movies not that good, but at least he was out there doing it. He was a popular culture icon. These people were culture icons. They were celebrities. How many celebrity authors do you know now? Do any of these authors? They used to come on talk shows. They used to be regularly guests on Johnny Carson's show or whatever. You don't see that too much anymore because we don't really value authors that much anymore. We want to see the new TV star. We want to see the new musician. We want to see the new movie star. We don't really have time now for literary figures as being so. That celebrity's kind of gone for the most part, unless you're really, really, really a huge bestseller like Stephen King, somebody like that, which is too bad because we used to celebrate literary authors. I just watched a movie the other night. Everybody was trying to be a writer. That was really popular at one time. I don't know what everybody's trying to do right now. Have their own .com channel or something. I'm not sure what's going on. But you know what? I studied creative writing and many years ago, and the creative writing classes are still getting full. People are writing more than ever. People aren't publishing anymore unless you're a bestseller. You write about vampires or werewolves, you may get published. And I think to myself, why so many people trying to be writers or writing? Well, these are interesting times, folks. It's a good time. And you know what? David Mamet, the playwright, who he says, writing is the easiest thing there is. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. Go for it. You don't need anything else. But that intimidates a lot of people because it's almost too easy. Anyway, those are a few of the World War II writers that came out of the war. And they were popular. They're celebrities, and they did well. Another great writer, he was in World War II. He wasn't a veteran, but Truman Capote was a huge voice of the 60s. He wrote, I talked about it the other day, In Cold Blood, which he called a nonfiction novel. And about a real-life event, but he fictionalized a lot of the goings-on. So the 60s and 70s were kind of like the glory years of literary fiction, why it matters. Things have kind of faded, like film. Now in Hollywood, they mostly do the Superman or superheroes or the for sure blockbuster. But they used to do small, intimate films, and they made money, folks. If you ever take my film class, you'll see. There was a time you could make a literary film without a guy in tights, and it actually would make money. Now, it won't make the money that Star Wars makes, and nothing makes that except for another Star Wars. And so with literature, it's become kind of that sort of market. Everything's got to be blockbuster, big. And these writers I'm talking about here, they wrote small stories, but they wrote epic. And don't think epic has to be lots of effects or outer space. Epic simply means the story is being told in a large way, living large. It can be living epic. So that's it. That's all I'm going to talk today, this 30 minutes. It's Wednesday. I hope you guys are doing something interesting in your lives. We've got another week of class. We'll be doing movies next week. I'm going to probably talk one more time, maybe on Saturday, about poetry, folks. That's right. Do you read poetry? Do you like poetry? If somebody wants to write any kind of extra credit thing, you can always write an extra credit paper on a poet or on anybody that we have, any of the subjects we've done. I'll make this an announcement. So if anybody wants to write, it won't be for the 15 points at a credit. It'll be maybe 10 points. If you want to do extra credit on a musician you admire, a painter, because I couldn't cover all these things in 1 week. It's impossible. If I'm assigning these John Steinbeck, and if you want to write about Kurt Vonnegut, as an extra credit, you may, I'll make this announcement. So if somebody feels that they might need some extra points, you can write one paper for 10 extra points on any of the subjects we've covered: painters, playwrights, literature, musicians, and next week we'll be doing films. One more, let me look at my notes here, see if I covered everything, make the assignments, discussions. I'll post it all tonight. It'll be due next week. We're almost done. Another week, and we're out. And I don't know if you know anything, but as far as I know, we're not coming back into the classroom this fall. All my classes are going to be online, I've been told. So I don't think we're going back into the classroom yet. On that happy note, wear your mask, do something interesting, do something creative. Why don't you write a paragraph? You've got a pen, and write a story. You know, if anybody wants to write a 5-page short story and get some extra credit, do it. Go for it. I encourage it. This isn't a writing class, but we do write, don't we? We do the essays. And maybe someone's got a story they want to tell. Just don't make it too vulgar or crude. Try to be smart about it and use your smart language. Other than that, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still trying to do a Zoom call. My Zoom wasn't working. I think it's working now because I just would like to do a 15-minute meet and greet. I should put some faces to the names, and I'm going to try to do that soon. So look for that. And that's it. I'm out. Enjoy what's left of the day. Bye. Stay safe.